Hello, this is Matt Caddo, Senior Fellow in Public Policy with the American Kratom Association, and welcome to Episode 5 of our End Kratom Misinformation series. There is a painful story being used across Virginia and across the country to justify a crusade against availability and access for consumers to natural kratom leaf products. At the center are a small group of anti-kratom activists, including Dean Francis, the founder of End Kratom Addiction, Wendy Chamberlain, who founded Kratom Danger Awareness, Patty Wheeler, who produced a documentary on her son's death, and recently anti-kratom gadflies like Andrew Kolodny and incessant media-seeking Utah State Senator Mike McKell. I will address all of those issues in a more detailed episodes in the next few weeks, but let's focus today on Dean Francis and his End Kratom Addiction message. Dean Francis has been using various social media platforms to tell the tragic story of his son Cameron's journey on addiction. I think every one of these parents who claim natural kratom leaf products led to the death of a loved one actually believes it's true, including Dean Francis, who believes it led to his son's addiction problems. There are multiple explanations for why they are wrong. That the post-mortem death investigations were deeply flawed and incomplete, that the medical examiners and coroners made mistakes, that the testing itself was limited, that equipment available to them was not sophisticated enough to detect the real substances involved, and emerging science on the safety profile of natural kratom leaf was simply ignored. At the same time, no one should minimize the suffering of a family dealing with an addiction. No one should mock a young man who has struggled, and no one should pretend that addiction is simple. But that's exactly the problem. Dean Francis has taken a complex addiction story, one that includes alcohol, repeated crises, and 7-hydroxymetrogenine or 7-OH opioids, and turned it into a political weapon against natural kratom leaf products and the consumers who use them. Dean Francis made this a public issue, indeed, now a national crusade. Now he complains that we are invading his son's privacy by having these discussions that he himself started. You cannot invoke privacy concerns when you took the issue to the public for your own selfish purposes. That's a simple distortion. For months, Mr. Francis told lawmakers, the media, and the public that Cameron's addiction had nothing to do with extracts or liquid shots and was strictly kratom leaf powder. He did it in press releases and in public statements. That was his core claim, and that was the story that was sold to legislators. That was the story used to demand stronger restrictions on access by consumers to natural kratom leaf products. But now the public record tells a vastly different story. A Floridian media article pulled back the curtain and exposed a far more complicated set of facts: alcohol abuse, public records involving alcohol-related incidents, including DUIs, bottled products, behaviors, including a shoplifting theft, and a recent 911 call tied to psychosis after 7-OH use. All of that matters, because if 7-OH was a part of the problem, then Mr. Francis's repeated claim that this was strictly a natural kratom leaf story was completely false, incomplete, and deeply misleading. The distinction is not a technical one. It is everything. Natural kratom leaf is a botanical product used by millions of American adults. It contains metrogenine as its primary alkaloid and only trace amounts of 7-OH. Chemically manipulated 7-OH opioid products are different. These products are being manufactured, concentrated, and marketed to deliver opioid effects that natural kratom leaf products do not and never have delivered. They are often sold in forms that look nothing like traditional kratom leaf: fast-dissolving tablets, sublingual strips, and other rapid delivery products, all designed to give you a fast euphoric high, leave you crashing, and then craving more, leading to addiction. That's why responsible scientists, regulators, and consumer advocates have said the same thing again and again: ban dangerous 7-OH opioid products. but do not falsely blame natural kratom leaf. Mr. Francis rejected that distinction because it undermined his story and his campaign. He needed Cameron's story to be very simple. He needed it to be clean. He needed lawmakers to believe the villain was natural kratom leaf powder, not alcohol, not 7-OH opioids, not polydrug use, not relapse after relapse, not concealment, and not the complicated and heartbreaking reality of addiction that is experienced by families everywhere. Addiction is rarely simple. Addiction experts routinely warn that people struggling with substance abuse disorders may minimize, deny, omit, or distort their actual use history. Families often do the same unintentionally. Loving parents may protect their children, excuse them, or believe the version of events they desperately want to be true. That's human, but it is not a valid basis for legislation or changes to public policy. When a parent turns a family crisis into a public campaign to restrict access for millions of responsible adult consumers of natural kratom leaf products, the story has to be accurate, it has to be complete, and it has to be honest. Mr. Francis has not provided that. He promoted the claim that Cameron's addiction was strictly tied to natural kratom leaf powder. Then, when evidence emerged that 7-OH opioids were involved, he did not issue a correction to lawmakers. He did not apologize to the Virginia legislature. He did not send Governor Spanberger a clarifying statement. He did not tell Delegate Cole that the story he used to support legislation was materially incomplete and false in many cases. Instead, he attacked the people who pointed out the facts. Nearly every day, I get a threat from Mr. Francis that both the AKA and me personally will be completely destroyed by him. His son, unfortunately, has now joined in that narrative, sending me bizarre movie clips warning me of my personal demise. I have tried hard to be professional, empathetic to the addiction issue, and understanding of the complex addiction issues that are confronted by the Francis family, all to no avail. Dean Francis sent me a truly bizarre text message that may explain why he is behaving the way he is. Quote, God blessed me with incredible instincts. I don't understand it, but I am rarely wrong. You can make your own judgment on that statement, but for me, it tells the whole story on what has motivated Dean Francis to do what he is doing today. Dean Francis truly believes God is leading him on this crusade, and since he is rarely wrong, that makes him right in virtually every instance. Perhaps that explains why Mr. Francis has criticized efforts by the FDA and others to explain that 7-OH opioids may be the real danger many of these modern addiction cases are confronting. That, in and of itself, is stunning. The FDA has made clear that concentrated 7-OH opioid products are a different category of risk than natural kratom leaf products. Scientists have made clear that 7-OH opioid products should not be confused with natural kratom leaf. Public health advocates have warned that chemically manipulated 7-OH opioid products are being falsely marketed as natural leaf kratom. And yet, Mr. Francis, with his, quote, God-blessed incredible instincts, unquote, has worked to blur that distinction because his campaign depends on blaming natural kratom leaf itself. That is the core deception at the heart of his crusade. The real story is not that Cameron Francis used natural kratom leaf powder and that alone destroyed his life. The real story is that Cameron's situation appears to involve a far more complex addiction history, including alcohol and 7-OH opioid products and perhaps other illicit drugs. And Dean Francis uses an incomplete version of that story to push a broader anti-kratom agenda. That is fundamentally unfair to lawmakers. It is certainly unfair to consumers, and it is unfair to families who deserve honest warnings. And frankly, it's unfair to Cameron, whose story should not have been flattened into a political talking point. Here is what should happen now. Dean Francis should send a corrected statement to Delegate Cole. He should send a corrected statement to the Virginia legislature. He should send a corrected statement to Governor Spanberger. And he should acknowledge that his prior public claims were incomplete and that 7-OH opioids did play a role in his son's problems. He should stop telling lawmakers that this is a simple natural kratom leaf story when the facts show it is completely opposite of that. He should join the responsible policy solution, remove dangerous 7-OH opioid products from the market, require strict labeling and testing standards for kratom products that are responsibly constructed, restrict sales to adults, and protect access to natural kratom leaf for responsible consumers. That is the honest path forward. But banning or attacking natural kratom leaf products based on a distorted addiction narrative is not science. It is not public health. It is not consumer protection. It is simply political theater built on a false premise. The American public deserves better. Virginia lawmakers deserve better. Families dealing with addiction problems deserve better. And every adult consumer who responsibly uses natural kratom leaf deserves not to have their access threatened by a crusade built on omissions, exaggerations, and false claims that the public record no longer supports. The issue is not whether Cameron suffered. He clearly did. The issue is whether Dean Francis told the full truth when using that suffering to influence public policy. And the answer now is painfully clear. In a 911 call Dean Francis himself appears to have made on April the 1st, just a couple of months ago, and in the middle of the Virginia legislature's evaluation of Dean Francis's war on natural kratom leaf products, here is what Dean Francis told the 911 operator. Quote, "We have a 30-year-old son that took something earlier. I believe it's 7-OH. And in addition to drinking some alcohol, and he is like losing his mind. He's psychotic. He's like, and I don't know what else to do." The 911 operator then asked, "How is he acting?" Dean's response, "In a rage. He can't move his car, just wants the keys. But if he goes right now, he could kill someone. He's in a rage." Unquote. The 911 operator asks, "Okay, is he responding normally? Is he completely alert?" Mr. Francis's response, quote, "He's not responding normally. He is literally like hallucinating. He literally walked into our house with a whole bottle of whiskey that he had just drank. I found two more and we're like, 'What are you doing? You're drinking.' Apparently his son responded, 'No, I'm not. No, I'm not.' And then he just like bumped her, I suspect meaning his wife. Like he doesn't believe he's been drinking. The whole thing's like insane." Unquote. The rest of this 911 call reveals that a more long-term use of 7-OH opioids that Dean Francis blamed on natural kratom leaf products for months. I personally don't think God empowers anyone to mislead or lie to public officials, however they feel they may be justified. But that appears to be exactly what Dean Francis thinks he can do, and he apparently insists on continuing to do so. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.